In the heart of Harrington Manor, a deadly secret festers. Sir Reginald Harrington is poisoned in a locked study. A cryptic telegram warning of a shadow from the past arriving too late. Hercule Poirot unravels a web of betrayal, wartime scandals, hidden heirs, and a killer who manipulates time itself. But when every suspect hides a motive, and a second message threatens more death, can Poirot unmask the mastermind before the final twist strikes? Chapter 1. The arrival at Harrington Manor. The train rattled through the English countryside, its rhythmic clatter a soothing counterpoint to the restless thoughts of Hercule Poirot. The diminutive Belgian detective sat alone in his first-class compartment, his gloved hands folded neatly over the silver handle of his cane. His impeccable black suit, starched collar, and perfectly waxed mustache marked him as a man of precision, a quality reflected in the sharp glint of his green eyes as they scanned the passing fields. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in 1935, and the rolling hills of Eldridge, bathed in the amber light of a fading sun, seemed deceptively serene. Yet Poirot's mind was far from tranquil. He had been summoned by a telegramma medium. He found both efficient and maddeningly impersonal from his old friend Inspector James Japp of Scotland Yard. The message was brief, urgent, and tantalizingly vague. Murder at Harrington Manor. Your grey cells needed. Come at once. Poirot adjusted his pince-nez and reread the telegram, now creased from repeated handling. Murder, he murmured to himself, his French accent softening the word into something almost lyrical. And at Harrington Manor, no less. A place of wealth, of secrets, of possibilities. He tucked the telegram into his waistcoat pocket, his thoughts already assembling the fragments of a puzzle yet to be fully revealed. The manor was the seat of Sir Reginald Harrington, a steel magnate whose empire stretched from the smoky factories of Birmingham to shadowy investments in Berlin, Shanghai, and beyond. Poirot had heard whispers of Sir Reginald's ruthlessness in business, his penchant for collecting enemies as others collected fine art. A murder in such a household promised complexity, and Poirot's little grey cells thrilled at the prospect. The train slowed, its whistle piercing the quiet as it approached Eldridge Station. Poirot rose, smoothing his coat and retrieving his hat from the rack. As he stepped onto the platform, a gust of cool air carried the scent of damp leaves and coal smoke. A chauffeur stood waiting, his peaked cap tilted slightly, beside a gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom II. The man's face was impassive, but his eyes flickered with curiosity as they took in Poirot's diminutive stature and fastidious appearance. Monsieur Poirot? The chauffeur inquired, touching his cap. Oui, c'est moi, Poirot replied, inclining his head. You are from Harrington Manor? Yes, sir. Jenkins sent me. I'm to take you straight there. Poirot nodded, noting the chauffeur's careful diction and the faint tremor in his hands. Nervousness, perhaps, or merely the chill of the October air. He followed the man to the car, settling into the plush leather seat as the engine purred to life. The drive wound through narrow lanes flanked by hedgerows, the countryside unfolding in a patchwork of gold and russet. In the distance, Harrington Manor loomed against the horizon, its Gothic spires clawing at the grey sky like the fingers of some ancient, brooding giant. The house was a study in contrasts. Its stone facade spoke of permanence, yet its many windows, glinting like eyes, hinted at secrets within. As the Rolls-Royce crunched over the gravel. Drive, Poirot observed the manor's grounds. The lawns were manicured, the rose gardens meticulously tended, but a certain air of neglect clung to the edgest overgrown ivy on the walls, A fountain choked with leaves. A house that wears its wealth proudly, Poirot mused, but cannot hide its weariness. The car stopped before the grand entrance, where Inspector Japp awaited, his overcoat flapping in the breeze. His ruddy face broke into a grin as he spotted Poirot. "There you are, old chap. Thought you'd never arrive. This one's a proper mess, I warn you." Poirot stepped down, his polished shoes gleaming against the gravel. "Mon ami, a mess is merely a puzzle in need of order. Tell me, what has occurred at this Harrington Manor?" Japp's grin faded, replaced by a grin set to his jaw. "Sir, Reginald Harrington found dead last night in his study. Poisoned cyanide in his brandy, the doctor says. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry. The study was locked from the inside, windows latched tight. And then, this morning, this arrived." He produced a folded telegram, its edges slightly crumpled, and handed it to Poirot. Poirot unfolded it with care, his eyes scanning the terse message. "Beware the shadow from the past. Death follows." The postmark read London, dated the previous day, but a handwritten note from the postmaster noted a delay due to a storm disrupting telegraph lines. "A telegram that arrives too late," Poirot said softly, his voice tinged with intrigue. "Most curious. Who received this?" "It was delivered to the manor this morning, addressed to Sir Reginald himself," Japp replied. "Too late to warn him, obviously. The household's an estate family, staff, all pointing fingers. I've got my men combing the grounds, but we're stumped on how the poison got in that glass." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "The how is but one piece, Inspector. The why, the who-these, are the heart of the matter. And this telegram, it suggests a mind that plays games. Tell me, who resides in this manor?" Japp pulled a notebook from his pocket, flipping it open. "Right, here's the lot. Lady Evelyn Harrington, the widow elegant, keeps to herself, but sharp as a tack. Their son, Edward Harrington, about 30, bit of a wastrel, always in debt from gambling. Daughter, Amelia Harrington, 25, recently engaged to a French financier named Raoul Duval, smooth chap, but something about him feels off. Then, there's Victor Langford, Sir Reginald's nephew, an inventor type, always tinkering with gadgets. Clara Langley, the secretary, devoted to Sir Reginald, handles his correspondence. And Jenkins, the butler, been with the family for decades." Poor eyes gleamed, a cast most promising, and their alibis. "Still sorting that out," Japp admitted. "Edward claims he was at his club in London all evening. Amelia and Raoul were dining together in the village. Lady Evelyn was in her rooms, Victor in his workshop, Clara in her office, and Jenkins was overseeing the staff. Nobody saw anything unusual, or so they say, Poirot said, clasping his hands. "Let us proceed to the drawing room. I wish to meet these players in our little drama." The drawing room was a cavernous space, its walls adorned with ancestral portraits whose stern gazes seemed to judge the living. A fire crackled in the marble hearth, casting flickering shadows across the polished floor. The family and staff were assembled, each face a mask of grief, suspicion, or carefully veiled indifference. Lady Evelyn sat ramrod straight in a high-backed chair, her black silk dress and veiled hat lending her the air of a mourning queen. Her eyes, pale blue and piercing, met Poirot's with a flicker of curiosity. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low and cultured, "Inspector Japp speaks highly of you. I trust you'll bring clarity to this ... tragedy." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, I shall endeavour to do so. My condolences for your loss." Edward Harrington lounged against a bookcase, a cigarette dangling from his lips. His suit was expensive, but rumpled, his dark hair tousled. "Father was a hard man," he said abruptly. "Plenty of people wanted him dead. But I was in London, so don't look at me." Amelia, seated beside Raoul on a velvet settee, clutched her fiancé's hand. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, but her green eyes were red-rimmed. "Papa was distracted lately," she said softly. "He kept mentioning old business deals, something about Berlin." Raoul, dark-haired and impeccably dressed, nodded. Sir Reginald was under strain. He questioned my background, but I assured him my intentions toward Amelia are honourable. Victor Langford, a lanky young man with ink-stained fingers, fiddled with a small mechanical device in his hands. "Uncle was funding my inventions," he said, his voice tinged with defensiveness. "He had enemies, though business rivals, old grudges. That telegram might have come from one of them." Clara. Langley, the secretary, stood near the window, her plain grey dress and spectacles giving her an air of quiet efficiency. "Sir Reginald dictated a letter to his solicitor yesterday," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Something about altering his will. He mentioned a betrayal long buried." Jenkins, the butler, stood by the door, his posture rigid. "I served the brandy myself, sir," he said to Poirot. "Poured it from the decanter in the study at 8 o'clock. No one entered after I left." Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting the subtle tensions, the way Edward avoided his mother's eyes, the protective grip of Raoul's hand on Amelia's, the nervous tick in Victor's jaw. "Mercy," he said at last. "Each of you has provided ... illumination. Inspector, may we see the scene of the crime?" The study was a fortress of oak and leather, its walls lined with bookshelves and a massive desk dominating the center. A crystal decanter sat on a silver tray, its contents shimmering in the lamplight. The brandy glass, now empty, had been removed for analysis, but Japp pointed to where it had stood. "Cyanide, no doubt about it," he said. "Mixed in the brandy, but how? The decanters clean-tested it myself." Poirot circled the room, his steps deliberate. The windows were latched, the heavy curtains undisturbed, the doors bolt was sturdy, its key still in the lock. He knelt by the desk, his eyes catching a faint scratch on the polished floor, a curved mark, barely noticeable. "Curio," he murmured, "a scratch where none should be." He rose, examining the desk's contents. Financial reports detailing losses in overseas ventures. A ledger with entries marked Berlin deal, and a cryptic note in Sir Reginald's hand. "The traitor moves again. Trust no one." Poirot's fingers lingered on the note, his mind racing. "This room, it speaks," he said to Japp, "but it whispers secrets not yet clear." Outside, Poirot questioned the postman, a wiry man named Tompkins, who arrived on a bicycle. "The telegram came this morning, sir," Tompkins said, scratching his head. "Should have arrived yesterday, but the storm knocked out the lines. Queued up in London till they got it sorted. And who sent it?" Poirot asked. "No name, sir. Paid in cash at a London post office. That's all I know." Poirot nodded, dismissing the man. To Japp, he said, "The telegram is the key. Mon ami, a warning, a taunt, or perhaps ... a distraction. We must learn its origin." As dusk settled over Harrington Manor, Poirot stood on the terrace, gazing at the shadowed gardens. The household was a tapestry of motives: greed, revenge, loyalty twisted into betrayal. Sir Reginald's death was no accident, no suicide. It was murder, meticulously planned, and the telegram, arriving too late, was a thread that might unravel the entire design. The little grey cells, Poirot whispered to himself, they are awake, and they will not rest until the truth is revealed. Chapter 2. The family assembled. The drawing room of Harrington Manor was a stage set for tragedy, its opulence a stark contrast to the tension that crackled among its occupants. The high ceiling, adorned with intricate plasterwork, seemed to press down on the gathered company, as if the very walls sensed the weight of secrets. A chandelier cast prisms of light across the polished mahogany furniture, and the fire in the hearth snapped with an almost accusing vigor. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center, his small, precise figure commanding attention despite his diminutive stature. His green eyes, sharp as cut glass, moved from face to face, cataloguing every glance, every fidget, every unspoken word. Inspector Japp hovered near the door, his notebook open, his expression one of grim anticipation. The family and staff sat or stood in a loose semicircle, their postures betraying a mix of grief, defiance, and unease. Lady Evelyn Harrington occupied a backed armchair, her black silk dress absorbing the firelight, her veiled hat casting delicate shadows across her pale, composed face. Her hands, gloved in lace, rested calmly in her lap. But Poirot noted the slight tightening of her fingers, sign of restraint, perhaps, or concealed agitation. Edward Harrington leaned against the mantel, his cigarette sending lazy curls of smoke toward the ceiling. His dark eyes darted restlessly, avoiding his mother's gaze. Amelia Harrington sat on a velvet settee, her delicate frame pressed close to Raoul Duval, whose suave demeanor and tailored suit suggested a man accustomed to control. Victor Langford, the nephew, perched on a stool, his long fingers toying with a small brass contraption that clicked faintly. Clara Langley, the secretary, stood near a writing desk, her spectacles glinting as she clutched a leather-bound notebook. Jenkins, the butler, maintained his post by the door, his face a mask of professional neutrality. Poirot cleared his throat, a small, deliberate sound that silenced the room's murmurs. "Madame et messieurs," he began, his French accent lending a musical cadence to his words. "We are gathered to address a most grievous event, the death of Sir Reginald Harrington. It is not, I assure you, a matter of chance or misfortune. It is murder, and the truth lies among you." He paused, letting the weight of his statement settle. "I wish to hear your accounts of yesterday evening and of this mysterious telegram that arrived too late." Lady Evelyn spoke first, her voice low and measured. "My husband was a man of great energy, Monsieur Poirot, but lately he was preoccupied. He spoke of old enemies, of debts unpaid from years past. Last night, after dinner, he retired to his study alone. I remained in my rooms, reading. I heard nothing unusual." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And these enemies, madame, did he name them?" She hesitated, her gloved fingers tightening again. "No, only vague references to his time in Berlin during the war. He was a young officer then, involved in delicate matters." Edward flicked ash from his cigarette, his tone sharp. "Father was always on about his glory days. Made enemies like most men make friends. But I was nowhere near the manor last. Night I was at my club in London, the Blue Anchor. Dozens saw me there. Poirot tilted his head. And yet, Monsieur Edward, your father's death might benefit you, Nan. A man in debt, perhaps, sees opportunity in tragedy. Edward's face reddened. Look here, I didn't like the old man much, but I didn't kill him. He'd cut my allowance, said I was a disgrace. But I've got an alibi, so leave it. Amelia's voice trembled as she spoke, her green eyes fixed on Poirot. Papa was uneasy about my engagement to Raoul. He'd been investigating business dealings, said something about shadows from the past. But last night, Raoul and I were dining at the Rose and Crown in Eldridge Village. We returned late. Raoul's dark eyes met Poirot's with a cool steadiness. Sir Reginald was mistaken about me, Monsieur Poirot. I am a financier from Paris, nothing more. His suspicions were the product of his own fierce, perhaps guilt. From his past, I assure you, Amelia and I were together all evening. Victor set down his contraption, its clicking silenced. Uncle was funding my inventions, mechanical devices, you know, but he was losing faith in me. Yesterday afternoon, he took a phone call in his study. I was passing by and heard him say, "It's confirmed." Then, he looked shaken when he emerged. Poirot's eyebrows rose. A phone call, you say? Most interesting. And you, Monsieur Victor, where were you when Sir Reginald met his end? In my workshop, in the West Wing, Victor replied quickly. Working on a new valve system, I didn't leave until midnight. Clara Langley stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. I was in my office, transcribing Sir Reginald's correspondence. He dictated a letter to his solicitor in the afternoon about altering his will. He spoke of a betrayal long buried, but wouldn't elaborate. I retired to my room after 9. Poirot turned to Jenkins, whose stoic demeanour remained unbroken. And you, Monsieur Jenkins, you poured the fatal brandy, oui. Yes, sir, Jenkins replied, his tone even. At 8 o'clock, I brought the decanter and glass to the study, as Sir Reginald requested. I poured a measure, left the room, and locked the door at his instruction. No one entered after. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor. And this telegram, beware the shadow from the past. Death follows. Did any of you know of its contents before this morning? Silence greeted his question, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Lady Evelyn shook her head faintly. Edward shrugged. Amelia glanced at Raoul, who remained impassive. Victor muttered, "First I heard of it." Clara's lips parted, but she said nothing. Jenkins inclined his head. "It arrived with the Morning Post, sir. I placed it on the hall table, unopened." Japp interjected, his voice gruff. "We've traced it to a London post office, sent yesterday afternoon, paid in cash, no signature. The storm delayed delivery until today." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "A telegram sent to warn or to taunt. Its delay is no accident. Perhaps we must consider all possibilities." He turned to the group. "Each of you, I observe, has a connection to Sir Reginald, and perhaps a reason to wish him harm. But the truth, it hides in the details. I shall require your cooperation." Edward snorted. "You think one of us did it? That's rich." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "I think, Monsieur Edward, that truth is like a diamond hidden in the rough, but revealed by careful cutting. I shall cut carefully." As the family dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes lingering on the portraits above the mantel. One depicted a younger Sir Reginald, stern and resolute, a military medal pinned to his chest. The past, Poirot murmured to Jap. It casts a long shadow. We must look to Berlin, to this betrayal he spoke of. Jap nodded. I've got men checking Sir Reginald's business records. He had dealings in Germany during the war arms trades. Some said shady. Might be where this telegram ties. In Bonn, Poirot said, and the phone call Victor overheard trace it. It may illuminate much. As night fell, Poirot stood by the window, the manor's grounds swallowed by darkness. The telegram, the locked study, the poison all, pointed to a mind both cunning and patient. The shadow from the past, he whispered, it moves among us, but Hercule Poirot shall find it. Chapter 3. The Study of Secrets. The heavy oak door of Sir Reginald Harrington's study creaked as Hercule Poirot stepped inside, his polished shoes silent on the thick Persian rug. The room was a fortress of solitude, its dark panelled walls absorbing the dim light from a single brass lamp on the massive desk. Shelves groaned under the weight of leather-bound volumes, their spines bearing titles in gold-leaf treatises on industry, military history, and obscure financial ledgers. A faint scent of brandy lingered, mingling with the acrid trace of cyanide that only a keen nose, like Poirot's, could detect. The study was not merely a place of work, it was a vault of secrets, and Poirot's grey cells hummed with anticipation. As he surveyed the scene of the crime, Inspector Japp followed, his heavy footsteps a contrast to Poirot's delicate tread. "This is where it happened," Japp said, gesturing toward the desk. Sir Reginald was found slumped in that chair, the brandy glass beside him. Cyanide, the doctor confirmed nasty stuff, works in minutes. The glass was half empty, but the decanter's clean. We tested it thoroughly. Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the room with the precision of a watchmaker. The desk was a chaos of papers, financial reports detailing losses in overseas ventures, a ledger with entries marked Berlin deal, and a handwritten note in Sir Reginald's bold scrawl, "The traitor moves again. Trust no one." Poirot's gloved fingers hovered over the note, not touching, but committing its words to memory. "A man who writes such things," he mused, "lives in fear or in knowledge of danger." He moved to the windows, their heavy velvet curtains undisturbed, their latches secure. The room's only door, stout and iron-bound, bore a heavy bolt, its key still in the lock. "Locked from the inside, you say?" Poirot asked, his voice soft but probing. "Bolted tight." Japp confirmed. "Jenkins swears he locked it after pouring the brandy at 8. Sir Reginald was particular about privacy. No one was to disturb him. The maid found him at 10, when she brought his evening tea. Had to break the door down." Poirot knelt by the desk, his eyes catching a faint anomaly, a curved scratch on the polished oak floor, no wider than a hairpin, arcing from the desk's edge toward the wall. "Curio," he murmured, tracing the mark with a gloved finger, "a scratch where none should be. The floor is immaculate, yet this, it speaks." Japp frowned, crouching beside him. "What's that then?" "A clue, perhaps," Poirot replied, rising. "Or perhaps a whisper of method. The poison, Inspector, how was it administered, if the decanter is clean?" "That's the devil of it," Japp said, scratching his chin. "The cyanide was in the glass, mixed with the brandy. But how it got there, with the door locked and no one entering? Could it be suicide?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint, almost pitying smile. "Suicide, mon ami, none. Sir Reginald was a man of vigour, of ambition. A man who writes of traitors does not end his own life, he fights. This is murder, most calculated. And the telegram, beware the shadow from the past. It is no coincidence. It is part of the design. He turned to the open safe behind the desk, its steel door ajar, papers spilling onto the floor. Among them were contracts, stock certificates, and a yellowed letter, its edges frayed, written in German. Poirot's knowledge of the language was sufficient to discern its contents. A 1917 correspondence referencing an arms deal, signed by a Heinrich Duval. The name struck a chord, recalling Amelia's mention of her father's unease about Raoul Duval, her fiancé. Duval. Poirot said softly, a name that echoes across years. Japp peered over his shoulder. You think that's connected? Raoul claims he's from Paris, no relation to any German Duvals. Claims, Poirot said, his tone sharp. The truth, it does not always align with claims. We must investigate this Berlin connection. Leaving the study, Poirot sought out the postman, Tompkins, who lingered in the manor's courtyard, polishing his bicycle. The man's weathered face brightened at Poirot's approach. Anything more I can help with, sir? The telegram, Poirot said, producing the crumpled paper. You say it was delayed by a storm. Tell me precisely. Tompkins nodded. Posted in London yesterday afternoon, sir. Should have reached the manor by evening, but the storm knocked out the telegraph lines. Took till this morning to sort it. I delivered it myself, unopened, to Jenkins, and the sender. Poirot pressed. No name, sir. Paid in cash at the Charing Cross post office. Clerk couldn't recall much. Just a man in a dark coat, hat pulled low. Poirot thanked him, his mind turning over the details. A nameless sender, a delayed message, a locked room, and a poison that appeared from nowhere. The pieces were disparate, yet Poirot sensed a pattern forming, like threads in a tapestry not yet woven. Back inside, Japp was questioning the maid, a nervous girl named Elsie. I brought the tea at 10, sir, she stammered. Knocked, but no answer. When I called Jenkins, we forced the door. Sir Reginald was ... gone. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the glass, mademoiselle, you saw it? Yes, sir. Half full of brandy, on the desk. I didn't touch it. As Elsie scurried away, Poirot turned to Japp. The scratch on the floor, the locked door, the clean decanter, these are not accidents. Someone entered this room, or ensured the poison reached Sir Reginald without entering. We must examine the household's movements more closely. Japp sighed. Easier said than done. They're a cagey lot, this family. Lady Evelyn's holding something back, I'd wager. And that Rualta smoothed by half. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. All hold something back, mon ami. It is human nature. But the truth, it cannot hide from Hercule Poirot. Let us return to the drawing room. There is more to learn from these faces. As they walked through the manor's echoing halls, Poirot's thoughts returned to the telegram. A warning sent to Lator, a taunt designed to mislead. The answer lay not just in the study, but in the shadows of Sir Reginald's past, and Poirot was determined to drag them into the light. Chapter 4. Motives unveiled. The morning light filtered through the leaded windows of Harrington Manor, casting elongated shadows across the parquet floors of the library. Hercule Poirot had requested private interviews, and the room, with its towering bookshelves and scent of aged paper, provided a fitting backdrop for revelations. A globe stood in one corner, its continents marked with pins denoting Sir Reginald's far-flung enterprises. Poirot seated himself in a leather armchair, his cane propped beside him, as Inspector Japp ushered in the first interviewee, Lady Evelyn Harrington. She entered with the grace of a woman accustomed to command, her black morning dress whispering against the floor. Her face, framed by the veil, was a study in controlled sorrow, but Poirot detected the faint lines of strain around her eyes. "Madame," he began, gesturing to the chair opposite, "I appreciate your candor. Tell me of your marriage to Sir Reginald. Was it harmonious?" Lady Evelyn sat, her posture impeccable, harmonious. "In the beginning, perhaps. Reginald was ambitious, charming, but success changed him. He became distant, consumed by his empires. There were indiscretions, affairs in his youth, during his travels. One, I believe, in Berlin, when he was stationed there in 1917. He never spoke of it directly, but letters arrived over the year's demands. I suspected." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes intent. "Demands, blackmail, madame." She nodded faintly. "Possibly." He burned the letters, but the tension lingered. Lately, he muttered about old sins returning. I wondered if it tied to this telegram. "Indeed," Poirot said. "And your own feelings? Resentment, perhaps?" Her gaze hardened. "I am not a fool, Monsieur Poirot. I endured for the children, for the life we built, but murder, no. I was in my rooms all evening, as I said." Poirot inclined his head, dismissing her gently. As she left, Jap whispered, "She's hiding something. That Berlin affair might be key." Next came Edward Harrington, his stride defiant, a fresh cigarette already lit. He slumped into the chair, exhaling smoke. "What now? I've told you. Why was at the club?" Poirot's smile was polite, but probing. "Oui, but debts, monsieur. Edward, they weigh heavily. How much do you owe?" Edward hesitated, then shrugged. "Thousands, 2 bookies, mostly. Father knew, threatened to cut me off entirely. Said I was ruining the family name, and his death. It frees you, Nan." Edward's eyes flashed. "Financially, yes, but I didn't poison him. Alibis, Solidask, the club steward." Poirot noted the evasion. "We shall verify. And this Berlin matter, did your father mention it?" "Vaguely. Some wartime deal gone sour. He said enemies from then might resurface. But that's ancient history." As Edward departed, Amelia Harrington entered, her steps tentative. Raoul Duval at her side. Poirot raised a hand. "One at a time, if you please. Mademoiselle Amelia first." Raoul bowed slightly and withdrew. Amelia sat, twisting a handkerchief in her hands. Papa was against Raoul at first. He investigated his past, hired detectives, said Raoul wasn't who he claimed something about. Family ties to Germany. Poirot's eyebrows arched. "Germany. Berlin, perhaps." She nodded. "Yes. Papa mentioned a Duval from his war days, but Raoul explained it's a common name. Papa seemed to accept it eventually, approved our engagement, but doubts lingered." Poirot pressed. "Yes," she admitted. He was distracted, poring over old files. The telegram might have been about that. Raoul entered next, his demeanor unflappable. He sat with elegant poise, crossing his legs. "Monsieur Poirot, I am a legitimate banker from Paris. Sir Reginald." Paranoia stemmed from his own secret guilt over past dealings. "Perhaps. I have nothing to hide." Poirot's gaze was steady. "And this Duval from Berlin, a relation?" Raoul smiled thinly. "Coincidence. My family is French, through and through. If you doubt, check my papers." Victor Langford followed, leading Poirot not to the library but to his workshop in the West Wing, a cluttered space filled with gears, wires, and half-assembled devices. "Uncle funded all this," Victor said, gesturing to a table laden with mechanical oddities. "But he threatened to stop unless I married advantageously some heiress he had in mind. I refused. I'm dedicated to my work." Poirot examined a gadget, a small box with coils and switches. "What is this, monsieur?" "A wireless interrupter," Victor explained. "Disrupts signals temporarily. Experimental." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Useful, perhaps, for delaying telegrams during a storm." Victor laughed nervously. "Purely theoretical. I was here all night, tinkering." Clara Langley arrived last among the family, her prim attire and spectacles accentuating her air of quiet devotion. She sat demurely, her notebook on her lap. "Sir Reginald was kind to me," she said softly. "I handled his secrets, his letters, but I cared for him more than as an employee." Poirot nodded sympathetically. "Unrequited affection, mademoiselle." She blushed. "Yes, he saw me only as efficient, reliable, but I bore no grudge. And his will. You mentioned alterations. He favored Victor more, reduced Edward's share. A small bequest for my gratitude," he said. Finally, Jenkins the butler stood before Poirot, his bearing impeccable. "I've served the Harringtons for 30 years, sir. No grievances." Sir Reginald was fair, if demanding. Poirot stroked his moustache. "And you observed nothing amiss? No visitors, no unusual deliveries?" "Nothing, sir." The household was quiet. As Jenkins left, Poirot turned to Jap. "Everyone has a motive. Mon ami revenge, greed, love scorned. But the telegram points to the past, to Berlin. We must dig deeper." Jap agreed. "I'll wire London for records on Sir Reginald's wartime activities." Poirot gazed out the window, the manor's grounds shrouded in mist. Motives were unveiled, but the killer remained cloaked. The puzzle was assembling, piece by intricate piece. Chapter 5. The Berlin Connection. The afternoon sun slanted through the mullioned windows of Harrington Manor's library, illuminating dust motes that danced like reluctant witnesses. Hercule Poirot paced the room, his cane punctuating each step. With a soft thud on the Aubusson carpet, Inspector Jap sat at a side table, rifling through a stack of yellowed documents retrieved from Sir Reginald's safe. The air was thick with the musty odor of old paper, mingled with the faint bitterness of pipe tobacco from Jap's habit. Poirot's mind, however, was far from the present. It delved into the shadows of 1917, a year of war, intrigue, and betrayal. Mon ami, Poirot said, halting before Jap. "The telegram speaks of a shadow from the past. We must illuminate this shadow. What have you uncovered about Sir Reginald's wartime activities?" Jap pushed a dossier across the table, its edges frayed. "From age, plenty, Poirot. During the Great War, Harrington was a lieutenant in military intelligence, stationed in neutral territory, but he ventured into Berlin undercover. Brokered a secret arms deal supposed to supply munitions to allies, but it went pesh. Betrayed by his partner, a German contact named Raoul Duval. The deal collapsed, leading to an ambush. Several men died, including British agents. Harrington barely escaped, but the scandal was hushed up. He built his fortune on the remnants, turning to steel after the war." Poirot's eyes sparkled with interest. "Raoul Duval. And now we have Raoul Duval, the fiancé of Mademoiselle Amelia. Coincidence? Nan, I think not. Japp scoffed, lighting his pipe. Exactly what I thought. Raoul claims no relation, but the name's too close. And Sir Reginald was digging into Raoul's background. Reports here confirm it. Poirot examined the reports. Grainy photographs of Raoul in Paris. Bank statements showing transfers from obscure German accounts, and a family tree linking Raoul to a Heinrich Duval, deceased in 1925. Ah, the uncle, Poirot murmured. Raoul is the son of Heinrich's brother. The bloodline connects. Revenge, perhaps, for the betrayal that ruined the Duval family. They summoned Raoul to the library. He entered with his customary poise, but Poirot noted a subtle tension in his jaw. Monsieur Duval, Poirot began, we have discovered your connection to Heinrich Duval, your uncle, Nan, the man Sir Reginald betrayed in Berlin. Raoul's smile faltered briefly. A distant relation, nothing more. My family name is common in Europe. Heinrich's actions were his own. I bear no grudge. Amelia, who had followed Raoul uninvited, paled at the revelation. Raoul, is this true? Papa mentioned Duval's shadow in his sleep, nights before he died. He tossed and turned, murmuring about atonement. Raoul took her hand. Darling, it's ancient history. Your father was paranoid. His own guilt haunted him. I came to England for business, met you by chance. My love is genuine. Poirot observed the exchange closely. Yet Sir Reginald's investigations suggest otherwise. Funds from Berlin, meetings with shadowy figures. You sought to infiltrate his life, perhaps to exact revenge. Raoul's eyes darkened. Preposterous. Prove it. As Raoul and Amelia departed, Japp exhaled a cloud of smoke. He's slippery, that one. Motive aplenty, if it's revenge. Poirot nodded. But motive alone does not make a murderer. We need method, opportunity. That evening, as the manor settled into an easy quiet, Poirot retired to his guest room, pondering the Berlin link. The telegram, postmarked London but echoing wartime grudges, suggested a conspirator closer to home. Who among the household knew of the scandal? A scream shattered the silence, echoing from the upper floors. Poirot hurried out, meeting Japp in the corridor. They rushed to Miss Clara Langley's room, where the secretary stood trembling, a crumpled note in her hand. Lady Evelyn and Victor arrived moments later, faces etched with alarm. What happened? Japp demanded. Clara handed over the note, her voice quavering. This was slipped under my door. I screamed when I read it. Poirot unfolded the paper. Silence about Berlin, or join Sir Reginald in the grave. The shadow threatens, Poirot said gravely. Mademoiselle Langley, what do you know of Berlin? Clara hesitated, glancing at the others. Sir Reginald confided. In me. He dictated memoirs last month, detailing the deal. Heinrich Duval was double-crossed. Harrington pocketed the funds meant for allies, leading to the ambush. Duval lost everything, died broken. Sir Reginald feared retribution from survivors. Victor whistled. Uncle was a rogue. Then, Lady Evelyn's face tightened. He was a survivor. War changes men. Poirot pocketed the note. This warning confirms the past is the key. But who sent it? The same hand as the telegram, perhaps. Japp examined the door. No footprints, no signs of entry. Inside job. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered with Clara. Mademoiselle, did Sir Reginald mention Raoul's connection? She nodded. He suspected Raoul was Heinrich's kin. Planned to confront him, disapprove the engagement. Poirot's grey cell's word. The Berlin connection wove through the household like a poisonous vine revenge for Raoul. Shame for Lady Evelyn, opportunity for others to exploit the scandal. The threatening note added urgency. The killer was active, covering tracks. In the moonlit garden, later, Poirot walked alone, the gravel crunching underfoot. The past arrives like a delayed telegram, he mused. But Hercule Poirot shall intercept it before it claims another victim. Chapter 6. The intercepted cold twilight enveloped Harrington Manor, the sky a bruised canvas of purples and greys, as Hercule Poirot made his way to the telephone exchange in the nearby village of Eldridge. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of impending rain, and Poirot's overcoat fluttered like a cape as he walked briskly along the lane. Inspector Japp accompanied him, his pipe puffing intermittent clouds that mingled with their breath. The phone call Sir Reginald had received the afternoon before his death gnawed at Poirot's thoughts. A brief conversation, Victor had said, that left his uncle shaken. The exchange was a modest brick building, its interior lit by a single bulb casting long shadows over switchboards and coiled wires. The operator, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Hargrove, peered at them through white glasses, her fingers poised over the plugs like a pianist awaiting her cue. Monsieur Poirot, Inspector, she greeted, recognizing Japp from earlier inquiries. You're here about Sir Reginald's call, I presume? Oui, Madame Poirot replied, his voice smooth. The call he received yesterday afternoon. From whom did it come? Mrs. Hargrove consulted her logbook, its pages filled with neat notations. It was from his solicitor in London, Mr. Elias Thorne. Connected at 3:15, lasted scarcely 2 minutes. Sir Reginald hung up abruptly, as if interrupted. Japp leaned in. Anything unusual? Eavesdroppers, perhaps? She shook her head. No, sir. The line was clear, no extensions tapped that I know of. But during the storm last night, lines were down could have affected transmissions. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And telegrams, delays common. Frequent in bad weather, she confirmed. That one to the manor was queued, but sent promptly once lines cleared this morning. Thanking her, they departed, Poirot's mind racing. The call was brief, mon ami. What could Thorne have said to shake Sir Reginald? Back at the manor, Poirot requested a telephone in the library. He dialed Thorne's office, the line crackling faintly. The solicitor's voice came through, clipped and professional. Harrington called me yesterday, yes. Wanted confirmation on will changes. Edward further, favouring Victor, and a codicil for Miss Langley. A generous sum. Poirot probed, and his tone agitated. Indeed, Thorne replied. He mentioned a betrayal resurfacing and hung up mid-sentence, saying someone was at the door. Mercy, Poirot said, replacing the receiver. To Japp, interrupted, perhaps by the killer or an eavesdropper. Jenkins, summoned next, stood rigidly. I overheard part of the call, sir. Sir Reginald said, the telegram will confirm it all, but no telegram arrived until today. Poirot's moustache twitched. He expected a telegram, from whom Jenkins shrugged. He didn't say, but he seemed anxious, pacing afterward. Searching the manor's postbox in the hall, Poirot knelt, his keen eyes spotting irregularities. Amid mundane letters, he found torn scraps of an envelope, pieced together, revealing a Berlin postmark, dated 2 days prior. The contents were missing, but faint ink impressions suggested German script. Ah, Poirot exclaimed. An intercepted message. This was the expected telegram, more letter warning of Raoul's true identity. Japp examined the scraps. Burned Egessamon tried to destroy it. Confronting the household in the drawing room, Poirot held up the fragments. This arrived yesterday, but was hidden. Sir Reginald awaited confirmation from Berlin about Monsieur Duval's lineage, who intercepted it. Raoul's face remained composed. Not I. I have no fear of truth. Victor fidgeted. Uncle mentioned a Berlin contact. Perhaps it's from them. Clara paled. I handle the post sometimes, but I saw no such envelope. Lady Evelyn's voice was steady. Reginald dealt with his own correspondence. Edward smirked. Sounds like father's paranoia caught up. As accusations simmered, Poirot observed a subtle glance between Jenkins and Edwarda, flicker of complicity. The call was overheard. Poirot mused later to Japp, and the interception points to someone with access to the post. That night, Poirot examined the telephone in the study, noting an extension wire leading to the servants' quarters. An eavesdropper's tool, he said. Jenkins, or another. The puzzle deepened. The intercepted Berlin letter exposed Raoul, but its destruction allowed the murder to proceed. Who benefited most from silence? Poirot's Graysal's word, sensing the twist the killer had not only poisoned but manipulated. Communications, turning delays into deadly advantages. In the quiet hours, Poirot stood by his window, rain pattering against the panes. The call, the letter, the telegram, all threads in a web of deception. But the spider, it will be caught. Chapter 7. The twist of the air. The morning mist clung to Harrington Manor's grounds like a shroud, softening the edges of the rose gardens and lending the Gothic spires an ethereal quality. Inside, the air was heavy with suspicion. The household, moving through their routines with the wariness of actors under scrutiny. Hercule Poirot stood in Victor Langford's workshop, a cluttered sanctuary of gears, wires, and half-assembled contraptions that hummed with the promise of invention. The young man, Sir Reginald's nephew and heir presumptive, was tinkering with a device, a tangle of coils and switches that emitted a faint buzz. Poirot's sharp eyes, however, were not on the gadget but on Victor's hands, which trembled slightly as he worked. Monsieur Langford, Poirot began, his voice a velvet blade. Your uncle's death places you in a most fortunate position. The will, it favors you now, does it not? Victor set down his screwdriver, his lean face tightening. Uncle's will was his business. He promised to fund my inventions, but only if I bent to his wishes. Marriage, respectability, all that rot. I didn't need his death to secure my future. Poirot's moustache twitched. Yet his death secures it all the same. And this workshop's clever devices, tell me, this interrupter of signals, it could delay a telegram, Nan. During a storm, perhaps, when lines are vulnerable. Victor's laugh was sharp, nervous, preposterous. My wireless experimental barely works beyond this room. You're barking up the wrong tree. But Poirot had already spotted a device on a cluttered shelf, a compact box with dials, its wires trailing like veins. He lifted it carefully, noting its weight. This, monsieur, could disrupt telegraph signals, could it not? A storm provides cover, but a mind such as yours could ensure a delay. Victor's eyes darted to the box, then away. It's a prototype. Never used outside tests. Poirot set the device down, his gaze unwavering. Let us speak of Berlin. The envelope we found, torn and burned, came from there. It warned of Raoul Duval's true identities, son of Heinrich Duval's brother, seeking retribution for your uncle's betrayal. You knew of this, did you not? Victor paled, his fingers gripping the workbench. I overheard Uncle mention Berlin, yes. He was frantic after that call from his solicitor. Said something about a Duval curse coming back. But I didn't. See any envelope? Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. You lie, monsieur. The scraps were found in the postbox, partially burned. Someone intercepted the Berlin letter before it reached Sir Reginald. And you, with your gadgets and your motive, had opportunity. Jap, standing by the door, stepped forward. What's this, Poirot? You think Victor tampered with the post? Precisement, Poirot replied. Victor delayed the true warning from Berlin, ensuring Sir Reginald remained ignorant of Raoul's intentions. But delay alone does not kill. The poison, it required another hand. Before Victor could protest, Poirot turned to the door, where Raoul Duval had appeared, summoned by a footman. The financier's dark eyes were wary, his posture rigid. Monsieur Poirot, you accuse me of revenge. I loved Amelia, not her father's downfall. Poirot held up a hand. Not accusation, monsieur, but clarity. The Berlin letter named you as kin to Heinrich Duval. Your motive was revenge, but your role was distraction. Victor, he used your presence to his advantage. Amelia, trailing. Raoul gasped. Victor, did you kill Papa? Nan, mademoiselle, Poirot said, his voice softening. Victor did not poison your father. He delayed the letter to secure his inheritance, knowing suspicion would fall on Raoul. But the true murderer, that is another matter. Victor's shoulders slumped, his voice low. All right, I admit it. I used the interrupter to jam the telegraph lines during the storm. I found the Berlin envelope in the postbox, read it, and burned it. Uncle was going to confront Raoul, cut me out if I didn't comply with his plans. I wanted time to secure my place. Jap seized Raoul's arm as he moved toward the door. Not so fast, Duval. If you're in on this. Raoul shook him off, his voice icy. I knew nothing of Victor's schemes. My business with Sir Reginald was legitimate. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps but the poison. It was administered in the locked study. Victor's delay set the stage, but another hand struck the fatal blow. As Jap led Victor to be questioned further, Poirot lingered in the workshop, his gaze falling on a small vial tucked behind a pile of blueprints. Its label read potassium cyanide used, Victor had once mentioned, for etching metal in his experiments. Curio, Poirot murmured. The means were here, but who wielded them? Outside, the mist was lifting, revealing the manor's stark silhouette. Poirot's grey cells churned, piecing together the threads. Victor's interference, Raoul's. Shadowed past, the intercepted letter. The killer had exploited the delay, turning a warning into a death sentence. But whose hand poured the cyanide? The answer lay closer, in the heart of the household, and Poirot sensed the net tightening. Chapter 8. The secretary's confession. The grand clock in Harrington Manor's hall struck noon, its chimes reverberating through the corridors like a solemn summons. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his small frame dwarfed by the towering bookshelves. Yet his presence commanded the room. The vial of potassium cyanide from Victor's workshop rested on the table before him, its presence a silent accusation. Inspector Jap paced nearby, his pipe unlit, his brow furrowed with frustration. The household was on edge, the air thick, with unspoken fears since Victor's admission of tampering with the telegraph lines. Yet Poirot knew the puzzle was incomplete. The poison's journey to Sir Reginald's brandy glass remained a mystery. and the killer's identity lurked just beyond his grasp. Poirot had requested Clara Langley, the secretary, for a private interview. She entered with her usual prim demeanor, her grey dress starched, her spectacles glinting in the midday light. But her hands, clutching her ever-present notebook, betrayed a faint tremor. "Mademoiselle Langley," Poirot began, gesturing to a chair. "You have been most forthcoming about Sir Reginald's affairs, yet I sense you hold something back. The truth, it must now be revealed." Clara sat, her posture rigid. "I've told you all I know, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Reginald's will, his fears about Berlin, the letter I transcribed, Poirot interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "But there is more. The threatening note in your room, silence about Berlin, or join Sir Reginald. You claimed it was slipped under your door. Yet I find this curious. Why you, mademoiselle? And why now?" Clara's lips parted, then closed. She adjusted her spectacles, a nervous gesture. I don't know. Perhaps someone thought I knew too much." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing. "Or perhaps, mademoiselle, you know more than you admit. Let us speak of the telegram, the one that arrived too late, warning of a shadow from the past. You handle Sir Reginald's correspondence, Nan. You have access to the postbox, to his secrets." Clara's face paled, her fingers tightening on the notebook. "Are you accusing me, Monsieur Poirot?" "Not accusing," Poirot said, raising a hand, illuminating. "I have learned you sent a telegram from London yesterday, disguised in a man's coat and hat. You wrote of a shadow, of death, following. But it was no warning, it was a flourish. Sent after Sir Reginald's death to confuse, to point fingers elsewhere." Japp stopped pacing, his jaw dropping. "Clara, you sent the telegram." Clara's composure shattered. She stood, her voice rising. "I had to. I found papers in Sir Reginald's desk, proof that Raoul Duval was linked to Heinrich, the man he betrayed in Berlin. Sir Reginald planned to expose him, ruin Amelia's engagement. I sent the telegram to warn him, but the storm delayed it." Poirot shook his head, his expression almost sorrowful. "Nan, mademoiselle, you lie. The telegram was sent after the poison was administered. And this," he held up the vial of cyanide, retrieved from Victor's workshop. "Traces of cyanide were found on your typewriter ribbon. You typed chemical formulas, perhaps to calculate the dose. You loved Sir Reginald, but unrequited love can turn to venom." Clara sank back into the chair, tears welling. "You don't understand. I did love him, but he never saw me not as Clara, only as his secretary. And then I found the truth. In his memoirs, my father was one of the agents killed in Berlin because of his betrayal. Sir Reginald's greed cost my family everything." Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff. "So you poisoned him, for revenge?" Clara nodded, her voice breaking. "I slipped the cyanide into his brandy glass before Jenkins poured it. I knew his habits. He always drank alone after dinner. The telegram was my irony, my way of saying justice was served, even if too late." Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. "You planned meticulously, mademoiselle. The locked door, the clean decanterol to suggest suicide, or an impossible crime. But the cyanide on your ribbon betrays you, and the Berlin letter, intercepted by another, played into your hands, did it not?" Clara's tears fell freely now. "I didn't know about the letter until after. I thought Raoul was the threat, but I acted first." Lady Evelyn, who had entered quietly, gasped. "Clara, why?" Reginald trusted you. For my father, Clara whispered, for the life we lost. Poirot turned to Jap. Arrest her, mon ami. The confession is complete. As Jap led Clara away, Poirot stood by the window, the grey sky reflecting his mood. The case seemed solved, yet a nagging doubt lingered. The intercepted Berlin letter, the threatening note, were they truly Clara's work, or was another hand at play, orchestrating a deeper deception? The little grey cells stirred, unwilling to rest. Chapter 9. The final revelation. The afternoon at Harrington Manor was cloaked in a heavy silence, broken only by the distant ticking of the hall clock and the occasional creak of the old house settling. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small figure a beacon of calm amid the storm of emotions that had erupted following Clara Langley's confession. The family and staff were assembled once more, their faces a gallery of shock, guilt, and lingering suspicion. Clara's arrest had seemed to close the case, yet Poirot's grey cells buzzed with unrest, sensing an incomplete pattern in the tapestry. Of this murder, Inspector Japp stood by the fireplace, his pipe clenched tightly, his eyes darting to Poirot for answers. Madame et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice steady, commanding attention. You believe the mystery of Sir Reginald. Harrington's death is resolved. Mademoiselle Langley has confessed to the poison, to the telegram sent as a taunt. But Hercule Poirot, he does not rest when the truth is only half revealed. There is another layer, a deeper deception. Lady Evelyn, seated rigidly, lifted her veil, her pale eyes narrowing. What more could there be, Monsieur Poirot? Clara admitted her crime revenge for her father's ruin in Berlin. Edward snorted, lighting another cigarette. She fooled us all, the quiet little mouse. Case closed, I'd say. Amelia clutched Raoul's arm, her voice trembling. Then why are we here? Is Clara not guilty? Poirot raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. Mademoiselle Langley is guilty, but not alone in her knowledge. The Berlin letter, intercepted and burned, was no accident. Another hand ensured its destruction, ensuring Sir Reginald remained blind to Raoul Duval's true identity. And the telephone call interrupted. So abruptly points to a conspirator within these walls. Japp frowned. You're saying Clara had an accomplice? Precisement, Poirot replied, pacing slowly. Let us reconstruct. Sir Reginald received a call from his solicitor, confirming will changes. He spoke of a telegram expected to confirm it all, yet the Berlin letter, warning of Raoul's lineage, was intercepted. Clara poisoned the brandy, but another ensured the warning never reached its mark. He turned to Jenkins, the butler, whose stoic facade wavered under Poirot's gaze. Monsieur Jenkins, you have served faithfully for 30 years, Nan. Yet, you overheard the call, knew of the expected letter, and the scraps in the postbox burned by your hand, I suspect. Jenkins stiffened, his voice low. I served Sir Reginald loyally, sir. I burned no letter. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But you did, monsieur. The ashes in the hall, great traces of German ink, a Berlin postmark. You destroyed the letter to protect... Whom? Yourself? Or another? Jenkins' composure cracked, his hands clenching. I admit it. Sir Reginald caught me taking small sums from the household accounts money for my wife's medicine. He threatened to dismiss me, ruin me. I found the Berlin letter in the postbox, read it, and burned it. I thought his death was suicide, that he'd poisoned himself in despair. I let it happen. Poirot shook his head. Nan, Jenkins, you knew it was murder. You swapped the Berlin letter for the telegram Clara sent, muddling the trail. And you acted not alone, but with Monsieur Edwards. Cigarette fell, his face ashen. Me, that's absurd. Poirot's voice was relentless. You, Monsieur Edward, stood to gain from your father's death. Debts erased, inheritance secured. You overheard the call with Jenkins, knew of the Berlin letter. You encouraged Jenkins to destroy it, promising a share of the estate. Your alibi at the club? False. The steward recalls you left early, returning to the manor in time to conspire. Edward lunged forward, but Japp restrained him. You've no proof. Poirot said, producing a singed envelope corner from his pocket. This, found in the grate, bears your cigarette, ash distinctive, from your Turkish blend, and the club's log confirms your early departure. Lady Evelyn gasped. Edward, my son, how could you? For freedom, Edward spat. Father's tyranny choked me. I didn't poison him, but I let Clara's plan unfold. Poirot nodded. Clara acted alone in the poisoning, driven by revenge, but you and Jenkins ensured her success by silencing the Berlin warning. A conspiracy of convenience. As Japp prepared to arrest Jenkins and Edward, Poirot's gaze lingered on the family. The telegram arrived too late, but it was never meant to save. It was a mask, hiding the hands that pulled the strings. The room fell silent, the weight of betrayal settling like dust. Poirot stepped to the window, the grey afternoon mirroring his somber mood. The truth was unveiled, but the cost was a family fractured beyond repair. Chapter 10. The ultimate twist. The drawing room of Harrington Manor was bathed in the pallid light of a late afternoon. The clouds outside, heavy with the promise of rain. The fire in the hearth had dwindled to embers, casting a feeble glow over the assembled company, who sat or stood in a tense tableau, their faces etched with exhaustion and dread. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his diminutive figure radiating an authority that belied his stature. His green eyes, sharp as ever, swept over the group. Lady Evelyn, Amelia, Raoul, and Victor, while Inspector Japp flanked him, his notebook clutched like a shield. The arrests of Clara Langley, Jenkins, and Edward Harrington had sent shockwaves through the household. Yet Poirot's expression suggested the curtain had not yet fallen on this drama. Madame et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice a measured cadence that cut through the oppressive silence. You believe the mystery of Sir Reginald Harrington's death is resolved. Mademoiselle Langley poisoned the brandy, driven by revenge for her father's ruin in Berlin. Monsieur Edward and Jenkins conspired to suppress the Berlin letter, ensuring the murder went undetected. But Hercule Poirot, he sees beyond the surface. There is a final twist, a truth that binds all threads of this tragedy. Lady Evelyn lifted her veil, her blue eyes cold but wary. What more could there be, Monsieur Poirot? Clara confessed, and my son, my foolish son, admitted his part. The telegram, the poison, the letter, all explained. Amelia, clinging to Raoul's arm, whispered, "Is it not over? Please, let us have peace." Raoul's face was a mask of composure, though his dark eyes flickered with unease. "You suspect me still, Monsieur Poirot. I had no hand in this." Victor, his fingers restless without his usual gadget, muttered, "This is madness." Clara acted alone, didn't she? Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "Nan, Mies, Amos, the puzzle is not complete. Clara's confession, it is true, but it is a half-truth, a shadow cast by a greater deception. The cyanide, the locked study, The intercepted letter. These were not the work of one mind, nor two, but of a master who orchestrated all. Japp's brow furrowed, his pipe forgotten. Orchestrated? You mean someone else planned the whole thing? Precisement, Poirot said, his cane tapping the floor for emphasis. Let us reconstruct the final piece. Clara poisoned the brandy. Yes, but how did she know the precise moment Sir Reginald would drink alone? How did she, a secretary, procure cyanide without suspicion? And the telegrams sent from London, postmarked after the murder, yet disguised as a warning. Who guided her hand, knowing her grief, her rage, and turned it to murder? He turned to Lady Evelyn, his gaze piercing. It was you, Madame Harrington. You are the architect of this crime. A collective gasp filled the room. Amelia cried, "Out, Mama. No, it's impossible." Lady Evelyn's face remained impassive, though her gloved hands clenched. This is outrageous, Monsieur Poirot. I loved my husband, despite his faults. Why would I kill him? Poirot's voice was relentless. For betrayal, madame, deeper than any other. You knew of Sir Reginald's affair in Berlin, not merely an indiscretion, but one that bore fruit. Raoul Duval is not merely the son of Heinrich Duval's brother, as we believed. He is Sir Reginald's son, born of that wartime liaison, a secret you uncovered years ago. Raoul's composure shattered, his face paling. What? That's a lie, Nan, Monsieur Poirot continued, producing a folded letter from his pocket, its edges yellowed but intact. This, found hidden in Lady Evelyn's writing desk, is a confession from Sir Reginald, written a decade ago, but never sent. It details his affair with a German woman, Anna Duval, and the birth of a son-in-law. You, madame, discovered this truth and kept it buried, but when Raoul arrived, seeking Amelia, Sir Reginald recognized him. The Berlin letter, sent by an old associate, confirmed Raoul's identity, threatening to expose the scandal and disinherit your children. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Raoul, is this true? Are you my brother? Raoul shook his head, his voice hoarse. I swear, I didn't know. I came to England for business, met Amelia by chance. My papers say I'm a Duval from Paris. Poirot's expression softened, but he pressed on. You were unaware, Monsieur Duval, but Lady Evelyn was not. She saw you as a threat to her family's legacy. Sir Reginald planned to acknowledge you in his will, reducing Edward and Amelia's shares. You, madame, could not bear this final betrayal. Lady Evelyn's voice was icy. You have no proof, only conjecture. Poirot smiled faintly. Proof. Madame, the cyanide vial in Victor's workshop. Clara had no access. But you did, visiting his experiments under the guise of interest. You supplied her with the poison, knowing her hatred for Sir Reginald. You encouraged her revenge, whispering of his Berlin sins, ensuring she acted. The locked study, a simple trigger string through the keyhole, pulled after you slipped the cyanide into the glass during a loving visit before dinner. You left, the door bolted itself, and Clara believed she acted alone. Japp's jaw dropped, but the telegram, Poirot, Clara said she sent it. We, Poirot replied, but Lady Evelyn suggested it. She sent Clara to London, disguised, to post the telegram, a taunt, not a warning, designed to arrive too late, implicating Raoul or others. The Berlin letter, she ensured Jenkins burned, exploiting his desperation. Edward's involvement was her manipulation, using his greed to distract. Lady Evelyn rose, her face a mask of fury. You dare accuse me? I protected my children. Protected. Poirot's voice was sharp. You destroyed them, madame. You turned Clara's pain into murder, Edward's greed into conspiracy, and Jenkins' loyalty into betrayal. All to erase Raoul, the living proof of your husband's infidelity. Lady Evelyn collapsed into her chair, her voice breaking. Reginald betrayed me again and again. That boy, his son, would have taken everything. I sent the telegram as irony, too late for him to escape, just as I could never escape his sins. Amelia sobbed, turning from Raoul, who stood frozen. Victor's hands shook, his inventions forgotten. Japp signaled his men, who entered to take Lady Evelyn into custody. Poirot stepped to the window, the rain now falling in earnest, streaking the panes like tears. The human heart, mon ami, he said to Japp, it twists more than any plot. The telegram arrived too late, but the truth, it is never too late for Hercule Poirot. As the family dispersed, the manor fell silent, its secrets laid bare. The crumpled telegram lay in the grate, its ashes mingling with the dying embers. A final testament to a tragedy orchestrated by love turned to vengeance.